Hey everyone, James here with you again today, and we're going to be talking about how to help fix your patella tendinopathy. So this is a really common condition among people who are involved with jumping sports. It can also be seen in runners, but it's a lot more prevalent in those who partake in jumping sports such as basketball and indoor volleyball. They'd be the two that I have seen probably the most occurrence with patella tendon issues. Now this is also one that I've personally experienced to quite an extent from back in my cricket playing days. And what you'll see when someone presents with a patella tendon or tendinopathy issue is that when you look at the kneecap, so I'll try and draw a decent looking kneecap here, but as you get the kneecap, just underneath that kneecap, so where the tendon sort of joins onto the bottom of that kneecap, around this area, so somewhere along there is where you will particularly find the pain that is associated with patella tendon issues. So that is very, very common with those who are involved, as I said, with jumping sports, and they're getting a lot of loading through the tendon, particularly in the landing aspect of the jump. That's where most of the issue is going to come from. So what we're going to run through today is some exercises I really like to help reduce the pain that is associated with patella tendinopathy, and then hopefully get people back to full function and playing the sport pain-free. The exercises that I really like for patella tendon issues are isometric exercises again. If you haven't seen the video of me overviewing isometrics, please go back and watch that as well. But our isometric exercises that I like for the patella tendon is the knee extension, a wall sit, and a rear foot elevated split squat. So we're going to just run through these exercises. I'm going to give you an idea of how to perform them to get best results. So our knee extension exercise, we're going to use, if you have access to a leg extension machine, that's great, but you can simply just use a kettlebell over your foot and hold that position with your knee pretty well as straight as you can get it. So what I like with the knee extension is to really get a lot of volume in, and it's not a high load exercise, but it actually works really well at reducing the tendon pain associated with the tendinopathy. So with the knee extension, I like to simply just sit on a bench to start off, and then I'm going to put that kettlebell over my foot, so the handle's going to wrap around my forefoot area, and then I'm going to straighten my knee as much as I can, and I want to hold this for a long hold, so we'll build my way up from 30 to 45 seconds and do that for 5 sets. And this is going to be a really good way to get a lot of loading into that tendon and help reduce the symptoms associated with that patella tendinopathy. Now the next one that I really like is a wall sit. This one is a little bit higher load than our knee extension and probably a little bit more difficult to do. And if you find that this really bothers your knees to do whilst or during the exercise, you can pull it back to a 10 second on, 10 second off interval format. If you can perform this because you've got quite strong quads or good endurance in your quads, you can do this again for 30 to 45 seconds. So it doesn't really matter, you're just going to have to base it off the symptoms with this one. Now I do like to progress it to a single leg wall sit if you're capable of doing that as well, and that is again going to just increase that loading going through the tendon or the tendon to help reduce the symptoms of that tendinopathy. So for the wall sit, you want your thighs roughly around parallel, a little bit higher or a little bit lower doesn't matter too much. Obviously the higher you go, the easier it's going to be, so again you're just going to have to judge it by the symptoms. But remember, a little bit of pain during the exercise is not that big of a problem, provided it's not up around a 7, 8, 9 out of 10 pain. It's not that big of a problem as long as it helps to reduce the symptoms after you've done that exercise, okay? So that's our wall sit exercise. Then moving on to our third, being the rear foot elevated split squat. Now I've got here, we want forward knee travel. So when we're in this rear foot elevated split squat position, we really want to emphasize pushing that knee as far forward as we can, because that's going to help load up the knee a lot more than the hip. So if we're just pushing our hips back and sitting with a pretty vertical shin, then that's only going to load up our low back and our hips more, and less so than our knee. Now, if your knee is quite painful, then I first of all probably wouldn't even do this one, and I would just go back to the knee extensions. But if you are doing this one because you don't have access to anything to do the knee extensions with, for example, you can push the knee back a little further and try and load up the hip a bit more, just to take away some of the load on the knee. But in the long run, when we're seeing some improvement, we want to force that knee further and further forward, because we're going to get more loading through the quad and the knee itself to really load up that tendon. And then it's also going to be really good for strengthening up that tendon in its end ranges of motion, okay? You can even look at doing something like a front foot elevated one in the long run, where you just hold that knee as far forward as you can in the front foot elevated position. But I would probably go with the rear foot elevated split squat. I'm a big fan of that one for helping reduce some of those symptoms and strengthening the tendon to get it back to that sort of pre-injury level, and even hopefully stronger. Now, another common question that I do get asked about these isometric exercises is when to do them and how often to do them. As a blanket recommendation, I'm a big fan of doing them at least sort of twice a day, morning and night. If you can do them 3 times a day, you want to try and get them to that 3 time a day sort of morning, night, lunchtime-ish time interval. I'm also a fan of doing them before training and games, particularly the knee extension. I probably wouldn't do a wall sit or a split squat before a training session or a game, because they're going to be a lot more demanding and fatiguing than what a knee extension will be. If you have a kettlebell or a resistance band that you can take with you to training or a match, you're going to do this before you start doing the warm-up, and then that's going to hopefully have your symptoms reduced before you run out to play the game, because obviously if you're in less pain during the game, then you're going to perform way better, because you're not worried about what your knee's doing, how it's feeling, blah, 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 okay? So you want to really work on this before a match or before training every time. Now, when the tendon does settle down, you can use them as a almost preventative tool. So if you're someone who has suffered this repeatedly, I would continue to do them for the probably moderate term anyway. But if you sort of just had a tendinopathy for the first time and now you've improved the symptoms, then you don't need to keep doing this thing over and over and over again. I would just use it more so if you start to feel those symptoms coming back a little bit, so you've got some low level discomfort there. That's when you want to really start getting back into them and make sure that you can prevent any really big recurrence of symptoms with the tendinopathy. So guys, I hope this has helped out your tendinopathy issues, particularly with the patella tendon, okay? If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can try and build this channel up a little bit more. I'm going to be more constant with producing videos, hopefully in the rehab and training scene. So like, subscribe, share, and hit the notification bell too if you want to see my videos as soon as they come out. I'm James Westhorpe, and I'll see you in the next video.